My daughter uninvited me to her wedding because my ex-wife insisted her stepdad should be the one to walk her down the aisle. So I accepted not to attend, but what happened next shocked everyone. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Mark Stevens from Ohio. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I always imagined walking my daughter down the aisle. It was one of those dreams I carried quietly, the way a man holds on to a photograph in his wallet. Faded, a little wrinkled, but precious all the same. Her name is Amelia, and from the moment she came screaming into this world, I promised her two things. I'd always love her, and I'd always show up. Even after the divorce, even after my ex-wife turned cold and weaponized silence like an art form, I kept showing up. Soccer games, dentist appointments, late-night phone calls when she had her first heartbreak. I was there. Maybe not always perfectly, but always present. So when she got engaged and asked me to help with the wedding, I didn't hesitate. I told her I'd handle the venue, the catering, the photographer. Whatever you need, kiddo, I said. And I meant it. Planning the wedding became a second job. I'd wake up early to sort out vendor contracts and stay up late comparing floral arrangements. My weekends were consumed with spreadsheets and cake tastings. I even learned the difference between peonies and ranunculus, words I hadn't known existed 6 months prior. But it wasn't just about the event. It was about that moment, that walk. Her hand in mine, the organ playing, our steps slow and steady as I gave her away. Not just to a man, but to a future she had chosen. I didn't want to control it. I just wanted to be part of it. After everything I had missed, everything that had been taken from me in the divorce, this felt like a redemption arc. Like I was finally being seen as the father I had always tried to be. My ex-wife, Denise, had other ideas. We'd been divorced for 15 years, but she still knew how to twist the knife without ever lifting her hand. It started subtly. Suggestions that maybe I shouldn't be involved in certain planning details, comments about how her husband, Greg, had really stepped up during Amelia's teenage years. I bit my tongue through most of it. I reminded myself it was Amelia's day, not mine, and kept the focus on her happiness. But something in Denise's tone, this quiet entitlement, made my stomach churn. Like she was slowly erasing me and replacing me with her second husband, brick by brick. I tried not to let it show. I told myself Amelia knew the truth, that our bond was different, that when it mattered, she'd choose me. We were in the final stretch, just 3 weeks from the big day, when Amelia came over with a bottle of wine and an apologetic look. I should have known something was wrong. She never brought wine unless she was nervous. "Dad," she started, her voice thin, like paper held too close to a flame. "I need to talk to you about something, and I really don't want you to be upset." I smiled and told her to spit it out. I was already bracing myself, but I wasn't ready, not really, not for what came next. She told me Denise had brought up how it might mean a lot to Greg if he were the one to walk her down the aisle, that it would keep things peaceful, that it was a symbolic gesture, nothing more. She said she'd thought about it and decided to let him do it. "I hope you understand," she whispered. I stared at her, my heart sinking like a stone in water. Understand? Understand what exactly? That the moment I'd been waiting for, planning for, paying for, was being handed to someone else because it would avoid conflict? I didn't say anything at first. I just nodded, as if my neck was moving on its own. She hugged me, told me she loved me, and left. I sat there for a long time after the door closed. The wine was still on the counter, unopened. My chest ached in that quiet, dangerous way. It wasn't about Greg. It wasn't even about Denise. It was about the fact that my daughter, my own flesh and blood, had chosen convenience over connection, peace over presence. She didn't want me to walk her down the aisle because she didn't want to rock the boat with her mother. That was the truth, whether she admitted it or not. And in that moment, I felt more like a wedding sponsor than a father. Just a name on a check. But I didn't lash out. I didn't yell. I didn't try to guilt her. I told her I understood. And the worst part? I meant it. I understood exactly where I stood. Somewhere outside the frame, watching from the wings, applauding politely as someone else took my place. That night, I walked past the stack of invoices on my desk, the caterer, the florist, the venue deposit, and for the first time, I wondered what would happen if I just stopped. I didn't bring it up the next time we spoke, or the time after that. Amelia chatted about table settings and color palettes, and I nodded along like I hadn't been quietly demoted in my own daughter's life. I think she mistook my silence for grace. Or maybe she hoped if we kept moving forward, I'd forget what was taken. But I didn't forget. Every phone call about floral arrangements, every email about vendor timelines, each one scraped against the sore spot she'd left in my chest. I kept thinking about how casually she'd said it, how rehearsed it sounded, like she'd already explained it a dozen times before coming to me. And worse, like she'd already decided how I should feel about it. Calm, supportive, detached. But I wasn't any of those things. I was grieving a moment I would never get back. Denise finally called a few days later. That alone was strange. We hadn't spoken on the phone in over a year. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was sweet, syrupy in that way I'd learned to distrust. "Hi," she said. "I just wanted to make sure you and Amelia are on the same page about the ceremony. I know it's a bit of a change, but we really think it's for the best. We. Not Amelia. Not I. We." As if she and her husband had rewritten the script and handed my daughter a part. "It'll avoid unnecessary drama," she added, "and Greg has really earned this moment, you know?" I don't remember what I said in response. Something polite. Something tight and hollow. What I remember is gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the quiet of the house pressing down on me like a weight. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be enough. How I'd fought for visitation rights. How I'd driven across town twice a week for 5 years to make every pickup and drop-off. How I'd sat in bleachers with rain soaking through my jacket just to wave at her from the sidelines. And now, with one phone call, Denise had managed to snatch the only role I had left to play. Greg had earned it? By being present during the teenage years when I was deliberately kept at arm's length? When every decision required negotiation and every holiday was a tug-of-war. I'd stayed in the fight when it would have been easier to walk away. And this was my reward. The following weekend, we met for brunch. Amelia was glowing, talking about dress fittings and a last-minute change to the dessert bar. I tried to stay present. I really did. But then she said something that stopped me cold. "Greg's been practicing the walk with me," she said, laughing. "He's taking it really seriously." My fork clinked against the plate. I looked up and saw it, the nervous flicker in her eyes. She knew. Somewhere beneath the smiles and place cards and Pinterest boards, she knew she was betraying me. She sipped her mimosa and avoided my gaze, and I sat there, chewing through resentment like it was Eggs Benedict. When the check came, I paid for it without a word. As we walked to the parking lot, she reached for my arm. "Dad," she said gently, "I know this is hard, but I need you to be okay with it. I need this day to be peaceful. Please." I looked at her, really looked, and saw the little girl who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. The teenager who called me crying from the mall because her card got declined. The woman now begging me to accept her erasure in exchange for a quiet afternoon. And I realized she wasn't asking me to understand. She was asking me to disappear, to make it easier for her to pretend the trade-off didn't cost anything. "I want you to be happy, Amelia," I said finally. "That's all I've ever wanted." She smiled, relieved. And I did smile back. But inside, I was unraveling. That night, I sat at my desk and pulled out every receipt, every invoice. The grand total made my eyes blur. Tens of thousands of dollars, venue, catering, lighting, photographer, DJ, even the damn monogrammed cocktail napkins. All paid for. All under my name. I opened my laptop and stared at the email drafts I had started and deleted over the last few weeks. Then I clicked on one and began typing. "Hi, this is Richard Mattson. I'd like to cancel our agreement effective immediately." It came in the form of a text. Not a call. Not a face-to-face conversation. Just a few gray bubbles on a screen that lit up sometime around 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Hey Dad, can we talk tomorrow? Mom thinks it might be better if you didn't come to the wedding. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a full minute before the screen dimmed. My hands didn't move. I didn't respond. I just sat there, the glow of my phone casting a soft light over the dining room, where the place settings for her rehearsal dinner still sat in my Amazon cart, unpurchased. I felt the way a man might feel in the middle of a dream that suddenly turns, when the people you know become strangers, and the ground beneath you shifts ever so slightly until you realize you're not standing on anything solid anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I don't know if it was anger or heartbreak or some sour blend of the two that kept me awake. The quiet of the house was thick, unforgiving. I walked from room to room like a ghost, touching picture frames and pausing at old birthday cards she'd given me over the years. World's best dad. Thanks for always being there. One even had a little cartoon of a father in a cape. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 2 decades putting on that cape every time she called. And now, I was being asked not to show up at all. Not because I did something wrong. Not because I failed her. But because my presence was inconvenient. Disruptive. A variable that didn't fit neatly into Denise's curated vision of harmony. The next day, I waited for her call. It didn't come. At 4:15 p.m., I called her instead. She answered quickly, her voice light, like she'd been rehearsing her lines all day. "Hi, Dad," she said, like nothing was wrong. I asked her to explain. She sighed. "It's just, Mom thinks it'll be tense if you're there. She's worried Greg will feel awkward. And I don't want any drama. You know how she gets." Yes, I thought. I do. I knew exactly how Denise got. I'd spent 13 years married to her, and another 15 trying to co-parent through her emotional landmines. I asked Amelia if this was what she wanted. If she really wanted me not to come. There was a pause. Then, "I just want the day to go smoothly." I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just sat there, the silence stretching like a rope between us. I could hear her breathing on the other end, fast and shallow, like she was waiting for me to explode so she could hang up and say she tried. But I didn't give her that. Instead, I said, "Okay." That was all. Just one word. But it felt like an earthquake inside me. I said it again, softer this time, almost to myself, and she exhaled like I'd given her permission to feel okay about what she'd done. "Thank you," she whispered. "I knew you'd understand." She didn't understand me at all. After we hung up, I sat in the driveway for almost an hour. I watched the light fade from the sky, the way it does when the day doesn't end. It just folds itself into something darker. That's how I felt. Folded. Smaller. Diminished. Like I'd been slowly edited out of the story, one scene at a time, until all that remained was my name on the invoice. I thought about the money again. The ridiculous amount I had poured into a wedding I wasn't even allowed to attend. And for what? To avoid drama? To keep the peace between Denise and her new husband? I realized then that I wasn't just excluded, I was betrayed. And that betrayal didn't need fireworks or screaming matches. It came in the form of a soft voice and a carefully curated request. It came from the daughter I had built my life around. From the one person I thought would never ask me to sit out of her most important day. But she did. And in doing so, she made a choice. Maybe she didn't see it that way. Maybe, in her mind, it was a temporary compromise, a necessary evil. But to me, it was the final erasure. The moment I stopped being her father and became just another logistical obstacle. That night, I opened every email contract I had stored. One by one, I began the process of unwinding. The venue deposit was refundable with a small cancellation fee. The caterer hadn't purchased the bulk of ingredients yet, so I was able to back out without penalty. The florist wasn't as accommodating, but I didn't care. I wrote every email calmly, firmly. Plans have changed. We are no longer moving forward. Please confirm cancellation. I didn't offer explanations. I didn't express regret. I just took back what was mine. By midnight, half the wedding had been unbooked, and I slept for the first time in weeks. There was something strangely therapeutic about it, pressing send on those emails, one after another, like closing doors I should have never walked through in the first place. The first vendor to respond was the photographer, a woman named Clarice with a polite but confused reply. "I'm sorry to hear about the cancellation, Richard. Please confirm if this is for the full wedding coverage or just the rehearsal dinner." I wrote back succinctly, "The entire event. Thank you for your time." She replied a few minutes later, wishing me well, and that was that. One less person documenting a day I was no longer part of. It felt cold, maybe even vengeful. But in truth, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was simply reclaiming my place, not in the wedding, but in my own life. The dominoes fell quickly after that. The venue coordinator, a sharp-tongued woman named Trish, called me directly. Mr. Matson, I'm confused. Amelia hasn't mentioned any changes. I kept my voice even. That's between her and her mother. I'm the one who signed the contract, and I'm the one pulling out. There was a pause on the other end, then the faint clicking of a keyboard. Well, I suppose we'll need to void the date, then. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't offer further details. I wasn't in the business of explaining myself anymore. Not to Trish, not to Denise, not even to Amelia. Within 48 hours, the caterer was out. The DJ, who I'd actually grown fond of. He was this quirky guy named Leo who'd helped me craft a father-daughter playlist, sent me a long email expressing disappointment. Let me know if there's a future event I can help with, he wrote. I closed the email without replying. There would be no future event. Not with Amelia. Not after this. Every button I clicked, every refund I processed, felt like a suture coming loose. Not bleeding, exactly, just opening. Exposing something I hadn't wanted to see before. I'd been propping up an image of fatherhood that no longer existed. A version of our relationship frozen in time, while the real thing had quietly been dismantled, piece by painful piece. The phone call started soon after. Denise, of course, was the first. She didn't even say hello. What the hell are you doing? She snapped, her voice sharp with panic. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she hadn't called me in months and now, suddenly, I mattered again. I'm canceling what I paid for, I said flatly. If I'm not invited, I see no reason to fund the event. She scoffed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. This is Amelia's day. You're ruining it. That struck a nerve. No, I said slowly. You already did that. I'm just adjusting my involvement accordingly. She cursed at me, then hung up. I wasn't surprised when Amelia called later that night. I didn't pick up right away. I watched the screen flash 3 times before my thumb finally pressed accept. Her voice was strained. Dad, she said, why are you doing this? I didn't answer her right away. I wanted to know how she thought this would work. Did she think I'd smile through it? That I'd sit at home while Greg walked her down the aisle and still foot the bill for his moment? You asked me not to come, I said. I honored that. Now I'm stepping away from the rest of it. She started to cry. Not loud sobs. Just those soft, sputtering tears that come when you're losing control. We've already sent invitations. People booked flights. What are we supposed to do? I felt bad for her. I did. But not enough to undo what I'd done. That's not my problem anymore, I said gently. You made a choice, Amelia. Now you're living with it. The fallout was immediate. Guests started calling Denise for details. Hotels had no records. Caterers didn't show. The rehearsal dinner turned into a last-minute backyard potluck at Greg's brother's house. On the wedding day, I stayed home. I didn't check social media. I didn't answer calls. I took my phone and left it in the kitchen drawer and sat on the back porch with a beer and the dog and let the sun fall over me in slow, warm layers. I imagined the guests arriving in suits and dresses, finding no chairs, no decorations, no music. I didn't feel joy at their confusion, only clarity. This was never about revenge. It was about drawing a line, and for once, I stood on the right side of it. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever known. For days, no one called. No texts. No emails. Just this echoing void where my daughter's voice used to be. I didn't know if the wedding happened. I didn't ask. I could have gone online, checked her Instagram, or waited for some friend to post a blurry photo of Amelia in white, standing beside the man who wasn't me, but I didn't. I couldn't. Whatever happened that day, it didn't belong to me. And in a strange, almost bitter way, I had made peace with that. Or maybe I'd just gone numb. Sometimes the line between the two is thinner than we think. On the 3rd day, a text finally came in from my sister, Ellen. Heard about the wedding mess. What happened? I stared at it for a while before typing back. Ask Denise. That was all I said. I wasn't interested in defending myself, not anymore. For too long, I'd played the role of the quiet provider, the man who showed up without ever being seen, the man who paid, smiled, and stepped aside. I did it in the marriage. I did it after the divorce. And most of all, I did it with Amelia because I loved her and thought that was enough. But love, it turns out, doesn't always grant you permanence. Sometimes it just makes you more willing to be erased. Eventually, the messages began to trickle in. Some from extended family, others from friends who had attended the wedding that wasn't. One cousin wrote, "We showed up, and there was nothing there." Amelia looked mortified. Another guest said they were stranded without food or music and that Denise blamed a vendor mishap. A few people suspected the truth and reached out more bluntly. "Did you pull the plug?" I didn't deny it. I didn't explain. I just responded, "Yes." No one pressed further. I think they all knew, in their own way, that this wasn't about money. It was about something deeper, something a venue or cake could never make right. Then came the letter from Amelia. Not a phone call, not a visit. A printed letter dropped into my mailbox in an envelope with her handwriting on the front, my name, written carefully like she used to write it on birthday cards when she was 7. I took it inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at it for a long while before opening it. Her words were shaky, uncertain. She started with, "I don't know what to say," which felt honest, at least. Then came the part where she tried to explain how everything spiraled, how she didn't know Denise would react so harshly, how guests were furious, how the ceremony was rushed, held in the backyard under a string of mismatched lights. "It wasn't what I imagined," she wrote. "It wasn't what I wanted." She never said sorry. Not once. But she did say she missed me, that she was confused, that maybe things had gone too far, that she didn't think I would actually walk away. That last line hit me like a punch to the chest. "I didn't think you would actually walk away." As if love meant permanence no matter the injury. As if a father's loyalty should extend past humiliation, past exclusion, past being told, plainly, that he wasn't wanted. I folded the letter and set it aside. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there with this terrible calm, like a man standing in the ruins of something that had burned down long before he got there. I thought about writing her back. I even started once, pen in hand, words forming on the page. But nothing felt right. Nothing felt true. Because the truth was too sharp, too final. The truth was this: she didn't just choose Greg over me. She chose the path of least resistance. And in doing so, she confirmed a fear I had carried for years, that all the effort I had put into fatherhood had been seen, not as love, but as obligation. That in the end, I was just a wallet with a heart. A man who could be invited only when convenient and erased when not. In the days that followed, I started returning things. The cufflinks I had bought for the wedding, the dress shoes I never wore, the tie in her wedding colors. All sent back in neat little boxes, each one a small act of closure. I deleted the email folders, cleared out the drafts. I didn't want to keep remnants of something that had become a wound. My house grew quieter, cleaner. Not empty, just clearer. Like a stage after the final curtain falls. The show was over, and I was done pretending I hadn't been the one written out of the script. I wrote her a letter. It sat on my desk for 4 days before I sealed it. And even then, I wasn't sure I'd send it. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even angry. It was just honest. Raw in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be with her in years. Not because I feared her judgment, but because I feared the truth of what it would reveal. I began the way I always used to when she was little. "Hey, kiddo." The rest came slowly, methodically, each word weighed like stone. I told her I loved her, that I always would, but that love doesn't mean silence. That it doesn't mean disappearing to make other people comfortable. I told her I was proud of the woman she was becoming, but I couldn't support a version of her that asked me to vanish from the picture she was painting of her life. I wrote that I didn't cancel the wedding out of spite. I canceled it because I realized I was paying for something I wasn't even invited to witness. That every dollar I spent felt like me signing off on my own erasure. That I had allowed myself to believe I was essential to her life, when in truth, I had become an accessory, brought in for funding and pushed out when inconvenient. I told her that hurt. Deeply. More than anything Denise ever did. Because I expected more from her. I expected to be seen. Not for what I paid for, but for who I had been. The father who showed up. I reminded her of the nights I sat in parking lots during her piano lessons because Denise didn't want me in the house. Of the time I drove 4 hours in the snow when she had a fever at college and didn't want to call her mom. Of the nights I fell asleep on the couch waiting for her to get home safe. I didn't list these things to guilt her. I listed them because they were real, because they mattered. Because in a world that constantly pulled us apart, those moments had tethered me to the idea that, despite everything, I still mattered to her. I ended the letter with this: I'm here if you want to talk. But I won't chase you anymore. And I won't stand in the background of your life, pretending that's enough. I love you, Amelia. But I also love myself. And I won't trade one for the other ever again. I never got a response. At least, not immediately. Weeks went by, then months. Holidays passed quietly. I heard from mutual family that she and Greg moved into a small apartment on the east side. That the wedding photos never made it to a frame. That she doesn't talk about that day much. I don't ask. I don't need to know. I've made peace with not knowing. That's the thing no one tells you about parenthood. You can do everything right, love with your whole chest, and still end up a stranger. But I don't regret what I did. If anything, I regret not drawing that line sooner. I regret all the years I spent trying to stay agreeable, malleable. I thought being the bigger person meant shrinking myself to keep the peace. But peace without self-respect isn't peace. It's permission for people to hurt you on repeat. And somewhere between the silence and the final letter, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. Not vindication, not righteousness. Just the quiet confidence of a man who knows he finally stood up for something for himself. Sometimes I wonder if she'll call. Maybe one day she will. Maybe she won't. I don't carry my phone with that hope anymore. I've stopped measuring my worth in her invitations. I've started living again. Simple things: gardening, fishing, reading the newspaper without looking for subtext in the silence. My life is smaller now, but not emptier. It's just mine again. And if she ever does reach out, I'll answer. But I won't bend. If this story moved you or made you reflect on the quiet sacrifices so many parents make, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. These real-life dilemmas deserve to be talked about, and your voice might be the one that helps someone feel seen. Let's keep the conversation going. See you soon in the next one.